Hello, everybody. Welcome to Impact Talks, the show where we explore how organizations and individuals are creating a positive change in India and world at large. I'm your host, Adarsh, and today I'm delighted to have Ms. Nimmi Sebastian with me. She's head of Corporate Brand CSR at Tesco Bengaluru and leads the strategic direction and executions of Tesco's brand in Bengaluru, Budapest, and Dundee, along with CSR initiatives in India with a focus on empowering communities, enhancing impact, and enabling sustainability. Her career in branding, corporate marketing, digital communication, and advertising spans nearly 2 decades and multiple industries. Along the way, she worked with one of India's earliest and most successful publishing startups, Explosity, co-founded and ran her own advertising firm, Octave, built the Bangalore's franchisee of India's more well-known ad agencies, handled global marketing for marquee clients like Citibank, Deutsche Bank, and a whole lot more. In her recent stint, she led communication and CSR at Lowe's India, where she helped to put the brand on the retail tech map in record time. An explorer at heart, a certified driver, and an animal lover. Ms. Sebastian, thank you for joining us today.
Most welcome, Adarsh. Thank you. That was a very illustrious start to the whole conversation, but thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's jump right into the conversation.
Sure.
In a world which is almost ruled by branding and marketing, with perception as its king, it would be nothing but a mistake to avoid or ignore power of communication, even in the social development sector. Ms. Sebastian, with your extensive experience in branding and marketing, I'm eager to hear more about your insights on effective ways to communicate and engage with customers, particularly around sustainability and social responsibility.
So that's a very interesting question, Adarsh. And I'd like to change the use of the word customer, because customer in the truest sense means consumption. I'd like to look at them as audiences, because that's in the sphere that and the realm that we operate. And to step back, you've referenced the fact that I am a marketing and a branding professional. And what is core to what a lot of people do today is talk about the things that have happened in the true sense of it being disaster. There's a lot of poverty porn. There's a lot of trauma that's being usually communicated either through people who are suffering, people who've gone through epic pandemics. And half the time, I think a lot of what the brand and the communication does is to focus on elements like that. But I do feel the more powerful factor here is talking about stories of love and hope and empathy. And I think that's where my role has been so critical in the whole conversation. And especially in the sustainability, in this development field, right? One can't shy away from the fact that this is our reality. What we see in the world, what we see our programs impacting is with marginalized communities, are with people from perhaps kids of lower income backgrounds. It's a very simple and easy way to then focus just on that and talk about their hardships and their stories. But I feel the more powerful story is still a story of love and hope and empathy. And that's actually what we try and change, and what I've tried to change through everything that we've done in this space. So branding and marketing does play such a crucial role, but it's just that fine line that one sometimes tends to cross when we're talking about these two worlds, right? And I think that's my stand on that. I think stories of love, hope, and empathy are so much more powerful than what you see in the world today. And that is actually what drives people and motivates people to do a little better. And I'll also give you a simple example of what's important about volunteering today. It's been one of the most simplest things to tackle from a colleague perspective, because somebody at the end of the day wants to give back to the community. It could be planting a seed, it could be a lake cleanup drive, but people's motivations are different because they go back home and they feel like they've done something, they've contributed to the planet in some way. And that's actually the same emotion that we're trying to extrapolate and use in every other sphere of, I would like to call it the corporate social responsibility domain or the sphere. And that's actually how I've seen the shift in how we perceive branding and marketing in this space.
Great. I think given your extensive experience, you have seen the rise of the thought of CSR over the years and how the whole sector consolidated in front of your eyes. But what I see from your answer is that there is also a very personal touch. Maybe it's from your experiences and something. So I'm intrigued to hear how your love for exploration and adventure has influenced your work in CSR and sustainability at Tesco. I mean, it's so inspiring to see how your personal passions can be challenged into meaningful work that benefit both people and the planet. So please tell us more about that.
So I'll tell you a little bit about how all of this started. And, from a career professional point of view, I'm not your typical CSR person. I do not come from a sustainability background. But here's an interesting thing that's always stuck with me through my childhood. I've always actively or passively been part of programs, giving back to community, working in an old age home, working in animal welfare. And, I make no bones about the fact that I'm a deep lover of animals, and I do so much to actually help in the animal welfare space. Cut to about 10 years back, when I was working in a blue chip company, and of course, I'm not going to name who it was. I remember approaching their foundation, their charitable foundation, and saying, I'd like to help. There's something that I want to do. I don't have the years of experience in a corporate social responsibility field, but this is the length and breadth and my passion of everything that I've done. Could I be a part of this? And I was just flatly turned down. And it's something that always sticks with me, because I think there are so many people like me who would perhaps want to give more and want to contribute more, but just haven't had the opportunity to. And actually look at how the entire conversation is now pivoted in the world. If you look at any of the brand trust surveys, like take Edelman, for example, you're actually finding companies now focused on giving back to society. You find employees or colleagues who want to join a company, but they're more interested in, hey, what are you doing for the world, right? What are you doing for the environment? Even when you find people shopping at stores, you want to know, am I doing the right thing? Is this going towards a sustainable cause? And that's actually why the whole CSR field or the whole CSR platform moved under the brand portfolio. Because let's be honest, the brand portfolio is the portfolio that keeps the purpose, the vision, the mission of the organization together. I mean, we literally are the heart and soul of the company, and this just becomes an extension. So it's a funny, I guess it's funny the way it's all come around, but the reality is that it is the purpose of the company at the end of the day. And we as brand custodians are more than equipped to talk about, giving back, talk about programs, talk about everything else that we do. And so some of these experiences have perhaps shaped who I am today. And, also being so deeply involved with animal welfare, I feel every single touch point has only made me a better person, has helped me understand the way we relate to people, the way we relate to the environment. And I think that's perhaps shaped my journey over the years, has made me a better professional, has made me a better advocate of the brand today and of the portfolio that I lead today.
Right. And I mean, when you tell us like that, it feels like a win-win situation for both corporate and the planet. I mean, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's any big brand we talk about, everybody is talking about what we did in COVID, what we did so you're absolutely right. And I hope our audience is paying heed to your words in that way. But moving on, and speaking of Tesco, I would love to know more about specific impact of your organization's CSR initiatives, particularly Project Reware and AgriNext. How have these programs affected the communities they serve and environment at large?
So, as you know, right, Tesco is a retailer, is a food retailer, and that's our core purpose. But of course, in India, we don't have any retail outlets. What we do is we support the business in running your stores. But the most important thing, and I think that's something that we've learned to pivot, is the fact that the amount Tesco just does globally towards sustainability, towards the planet, towards working with agriculture, working with farmers who adopt sustainable agricultural practices. We are even moving away from meat to plant-based food. So there is so much that they're doing in the world of packaging. It was important that we stay connected to its truest core purpose. And our purpose is serving our customers, communities, and planet a little better every day. And what we then decided to do in India, keeping in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we said, let's focus on food, let's focus on education, and let's focus on, of course, disaster relief, which is now something most companies can't sort of stay away from. Now, if I look at food, we further divided food into sustainable agriculture, which is AgriNext, which you just spoke about. And of course, we have Reware, which is waste management. Now, why did we pick these two, right? Let's talk about Reware, for example. Reware is a project which focuses on waste management. And, if you've been in India, forget India, if you've been in Bangalore, you know what a huge problem that is. Landfills, people not even understanding the conscious sort of awareness of segregation, right? So we partnered with Samarthanam Trust for the Disabled. And what we've done is taken up 5 wards in Bangalore, where through these 5 wards, 3 wards in Whitefield and 2 wards in HSR layout, and we work with the BBMP, with the government, with the rag pickers to basically ensure that we had a 3-pronged approach. So one was the awareness drive that we did with these folks every morning. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when these BBMP trucks come to pick up the garbage, there are people who actually walk behind it. There are people who walk behind it, go into doors and actually talk to people and try and have those conversations about segregation. And trust me, Adarsh, these are not easy conversations to have, because you find knocking on someone's door early in the morning at some 8 o'clock, people open the door and the first question is like, hey, do you segregate your waste? So it isn't just about doing that, but it is about constant follow-ups, follow-throughs, and helping them understand, right? Part 2 was, where are they segregating it and where are they disposing of the waste? So then we worked very closely with the rag pickers and the BBMP Pur Karnivas to basically help them understand what we do here and the importance of it. And it's interesting because through these 5 wards, we've managed, and we started this project last year. So I think we've covered about 25,000 households as of date. And is it a job that's well done? I would say it's a job that needs to be consistent and continuous, because at the end of the day, you're trying to change a behavioral pattern. And that takes the longest, right? Trying to tell someone to do something in a certain way, I'll do it one day, and then the next day I'll just do whatever I want. So we've tried to keep that going in these 5 wards, and we're hoping to continue that until we reach a point where we believe we've created that difference. So that's Reware. AgriNext is a completely different project. Now, Yadgir is, of course, the district in which we're operating AgriNext in. And Yadgir is an area which is an area that's been recognized by the Karnataka government as being an aspirational district for corporates to actually contribute and help the farmers in those regions. So we've tied up with about 5,000 farming households, where we're bringing them a multi-pronged approach to how they deal with agriculture. So from agricultural crops to goatery to fishing to farming. And what we want to do after the end of the project, which is after 3 years and after 4 years, is to be able to help them sustain themselves and come out of it. And I think this is year 2 in our project in AgriNext, and we have almost finished the implementation of solar lamps, of solar water. They are now into the 2nd season of their harvesting crop. So again, a very, very interesting project to work in. And I feel like the beneficiaries of those programs and those projects will really see the light of day after we exit from the project, because that's the true testament of what we've done and how we've been able to help. And of course, we do that project with Kalike. Kalike is a Tata Trust, associate partner. And Kalike also operates with the SBI, the local government body. So it's not just one person giving money to an NGO to make sure it's done. It's a whole lot of people that come together to be able to help one community, to help them develop and to help them really increase their daily wages and their earnings.
Right, because as you rightly said, that behavioral change communication, whether it's in terms of waste management, I mean, I saw it firsthand in Amritsar city, like Amritsar which is like, and also when you talk about Bangalore, you're absolutely right on point that we see that. And I think our human actions also take toll on our planet. And that's why it is important. I mean, when one says that the first plastic that was created is right, still exists right now. And nobody can, really forget that harrowing pictures of floods in, in Bangalore. And that's all what we are, I think, paying back, or maybe that's nature's redemption, if you want to call it.
So, absolutely. I mean, one only hopes, right?
Yeah.
There are conversations around single-use plastic now, but there isn't anything that's single-use plastic anymore, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
And in fact, what we did at Tesco is we went completely plastic-free last year. But to make those changes requires an incremental effort from everybody put together, right? Because overnight, we took away water bottles, we took away plastic cups that, colleagues used to drink a cup of tea or coffee. And then it required you to bring in your own mug. So everything is a behavioral change. And it's amazing to see companies do that and take the step in the right direction, if you know what I mean.
So, so because you talk about consistency of efforts, because that's how one can really make a real impact. And that puts me to, brings me to the next question, that as someone who is clearly passionate about making a positive impact through consistent efforts, through CSR, what advice would you give to other organizations who would like to make these meaningful changes with measurable impact, especially around critical issues like waste management, like you mentioned, and agriculture through your Agriness program?
Look, there are, I guess, the CSR law, and it came into effect 2014, right? Yeah. And of course, just before the pandemic, we saw a whole change in what happened, because not just was it paramount for companies to give the money, but utilization also became a very important factor. But here's a very interesting thing that's actually happened. Everyone in this field understands the importance of monitoring, understands the importance of KPIs and measuring and monitoring agencies, right? But I think, and I feel as a practice that's very well been implemented in every corporate who sets foot in this direction. But I think what's most important is what's coming out of those reports. It's the analysis of the report that helps you either course correct things that you're doing within the program, because sometimes you get into a program which is a year and 2 years, and what you set initially as outcomes start changing all the way through in the between. I mean, look what happened when COVID hit, right? Nobody even imagined that we would be, I'm sorry, I can't even imagine that I've been part of a pandemic. It's something that you heard of or you read somewhere. And to even imagine that one could be working like you and I are talking today, but this sort of became the norm. And can you imagine that in a field, in the social welfare field, where it was so important to touch and feel and be with people, right? Because that's really what's important. COVID completely altered that. And what I think COVID taught us more than anything else was that all of this was still possible, but by being consistent, by having more conversations. So even though it took away my ability to be on the field and actually track these programs and track or monitor the agencies, what's important is I started video calls, I started photographs. And could those photographs be doctored? It could have been, but I guess it's then the relationship that you have with your NGO partner. It's that trust that you established. And it was hardest on the NGOs, I feel, right? Because they were losing everything that kept them core to who they are today. I really feel that's been a leveler for me. Because if you ask any professional, they'll tell you about all the reports they generate. They'll tell you that they have audits. They tell you they have risk. I really feel COVID changed all of it. And for me, the most important thing has been trust, has been the ability to be able to keep that communication constant, consistent, and be there all the time. I mean, the team just went to Yadgir in April this year. And it was enlightening to see the actual ground realities, but we lived through those programs online. And I feel that's really changed the course of everything we do today,
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting the way you put how values are asked, because obviously it's very difficult to actually measure non-tangible impact in social welfare sector. So, I mean, the way you put values, side by side with the measurable impact, I mean, it would be interesting for our audience if you would let us know more about how you measure impact at Tesco of your programs, and how do you track their progress, achieving those goals that you have set up. And I'm excited to hear more about your approach to ensuring that these initiatives have tangible impact on the ground. Because at the end of the day, sometimes even though we are driven, we see that might not have that kind of impact on the ground or real change happening, which is actually transforming the lives of the people who are associated with these programs.
And I'll take a cue from Project Reware that we just spoke about, which is waste management. And trust me, it's possibly the most difficult thing to do when you're on ground and doing these things with people, right? And I realized that month after month when we were getting reports, so the teams would go on ground, would actually tell us that they've covered 10 households, 20 households, 25 households. And my question to them would always be, but how do you know somebody's actually doing it? Because I may have opened the door and I said, yes, thank you, I will segregate my waste. But are you actually going to be sitting there watching me do it? Because it's a shift. It's a complete trajectory that you have to change, right? And what we decided to do was then go on the ground with the BBMP officials when these awareness drives were being conducted. And of course, that happened even through COVID. That happened with us wearing masks, walking around, talking to people. And then we understood that it's not only just a conversation, but it is about being able to change the people in that community. So we understood that, and kids are people who create the most amount of impact in families. What we started to do was then create awareness drives in the local schools of the communities that were being served. And we found that by reaching children, by talking to children, they were slowly creating that impact, right? Could I attribute it completely to that one, or, the entire week of conversation that we did? Perhaps not, but that was one factor that we looked at. Another one was project management. And we realized that the teams that were working on the ground, although they had all this information, things that were coming to us, and the way they were being able to consume all the data on the project wasn't in the most consumable format. And what we did is we utilized the IP of who we are at Tesco today. I mean, look at the number of professionals who work here, from from HR to finance to project managers. And we actually conducted a capability upskilling program for our NGO in this particular field to help them understand how they would approach a program and how they would approach a project. So that's another change that we did. I feel that when you step away from the program, just give money, look at your monitoring reports every month, and then submit it to the board at the end of the month, and you think that your job is done, like you rightly said, Adarsh, that's not really what's happening on the ground. It's only when you're there in person, understanding the problems, the on-ground realities that the NGO has, and for you to be able to tweak your program to be able to get the most for your beneficiary is when that actually happens. And I think these are the subtle things that we have done to help in, say, a project like Reware.
Right. I think what you have told us and our audience today is that corporates are doing real corporate social responsibility when they are being responsible for the work, even with their partners. So I think it's more about hand-in-hand approach that you're talking about with the organizations. And thank you so much for your insights. And that's all we have time for today. And I want to thank our guest, Ms. Nimmi Sebastian, for joining us and sharing her insights on how Tesco Bengaluru is making a positive impact on the society and the environment through its corporate brand and CSR initiatives. Ms. Nimmi, it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Adarsh. And I hope that we will be able to chat more, but I'm delighted for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure that our listeners, enjoyed this conversation, and they will enjoy this conversation whenever they hear it, and they will learn something new. They will learn something about hand-in-hand approach. They will learn something about emotions in CSR, because somewhere down the line, when you talk about the word corporate, it is not the first thing that comes to the mind. So And so this is for our audience that if you want to learn more about Tesco Bengaluru and its CSR programs, you can visit their website at www.tescobengaluru.com and follow them and Ms. Nimmi Sebastian on social media. And don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Impact Talks, where we bring you inspiring stories of people and organizations that are making a difference in the world. Until then, this is Adarsh signing off. Have a great day.